So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the CERAWeek plenary on AI for optimization and innovation. My name is Judson Jacobs, and I'm a research director here at S&P Global, where I help to lead our energy, technology, and innovation practice, and I'll also be the moderator for today's session. So one of the changes that we've seen from last year's CERAWeek to this is really a shift in the conversation. And we're seeing this both within the formal sessions, but then also in the hallways as well. But really a shift in the conversation from AI's potential to how it's actually being applied to deliver value. And so we wanted to continue that conversation in this plenary as well. And to do so, we've brought together a number of senior industry representatives from a diverse group of different entities to help share their experiences and their observations and wisdom with us to kind of get that. We have today Abdullah Al-Affasi, who's the Deputy Managing Director of Corporate Planning for Kuwait Petroleum Corporation. We have John Downey, who's the Global Energy Industry Sector Lead for Accenture. And finally, we have Hussein Shell, who is the Director and Chief Technologist for Energy and Utilities with Amazon Web Services. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Looking forward to a great conversation. So, Abdullah, not just because you're immediately to my left, but I thought I might turn to you first and really just kind of get a sense. Help set the stage for us. How is Kuwait Petroleum Corporation approaching AI?
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me here. I look forward to really have a fruitful discussion towards this topic with this esteemed panelists we have today. First, I want to just start off with the digital transformation strategy of KPC. The launch of it had included several strategic initiatives, whereby AI is one of them under the cloud enablement. Having this strategy set forth was the definitive step forward towards revolutionizing our operations and improve efficiency and optimization. The strategic directions were clearly laid out. It is to meet and exceed operational excellence, high standards of it, by 2040. This commitment to excellence requires adopting cutting-edge digital technologies to enhance both efficiency and innovation within an organization. Moving forward in this, over the past few years, few of the AI examples were deployed within the KPC subsidiaries. I'll talk specifically about KOC, that is the domestic upstream company. There was a lot to do with handling both, 50 plus identified AI projects. 7 of them are tested, piloted, done great results. 11 of them are in the progress and the rest to follow. I'll just highlight a couple of the tested pilots. So drilling operation takes a big time of the KOC operations. With the increase of drilling rig activities in Kuwait, there was an increase of the frequency of the stack pipes. So the engineers have developed, utilizing an AI tool, a stack pipe predictive, a model that helped them and improve a lot on the stack pipe reduction. The other project was the ESP failure prediction. So more drilling, more wells. So we're deploying the artificial lift ESPs, and more pumps are being utilized, and failures seems to be frequently reoccurring. So again, utilizing database available within KOC, along with the technology providers, they were able to develop an AI model that helped them, using all the different data points, to prolong the ESP lifespan with less failures in between, hence leading to the production optimization and cost reduction. And a few more options coming down the way. It's throughout the value chain, but specifically where we're feeling the impact happening in the upstream sector.
It's great. So you started with a strategy and some very specific examples where you're actually beginning to see value, and we're gonna touch upon where those are going as well. But Hussein, so again, great diverse group. Hussein, you have an opportunity as a hyperscaler to really be able to see, kind of across the industry. Where do you see for your customers? Where are they investing, and where do they have interest in these areas?
So first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for coming. Apologies, my voice is starting to go away from having all the wonderful conversations with everyone. We're lucky enough at AWS to work across the full value chain. And so we have use cases and problems that we're trying to solve not only in oil and gas, but also in utilities. So everything from chatbots and building a human-based interface type of interaction with data, all the way to building brand new, industry-unique and industry-new foundational models for things like reservoir and seismic. So the range is pretty wide. One example I'd love to chat about is around reservoir simulations. So we partnered with a company called Stoneridge Technologies, which is a pioneer in using GPUs, first using GPUs for reservoir simulations. And what we're doing now is we're integrating a generative AI capabilities to that allows the users of their software to not only interrogate and optimize the start of simulation using basically a human interface interaction and just asking questions about the parameters that need to be set up so that you don't waste a lot of simulations and high performance computing and therefore a lot of money behind the scenes. And then also on the way back. So the output would be also available for interrogation and talking to it. We're going to be expanding that to even include agents behind the scenes that are doing some of the analysis. So it's not live and not on the fly type of analysis. But that's some of the really deep kind of use cases that we're working on. Now, of course, we work with a lot of customers on our Amazon queue that is simply connecting for business. It's simply connecting to their data sources, pulling up unstructured data along with structured data. Abdullah touched on some of the drilling applications that are happening there. It's not all generative AI, of course. We do traditional ML, but also generative AI. But I think Gen AI has become so popular today, and the possibility that it's creating is phenomenal and unprecedented.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a lot of ease in integrating corpus of data from all kinds of different sources and the ability to interact with them as a human being, asking very natural language type of questions and coming up with insights, very, very quickly. Within a week, we can do that with some customers. Nice. And then, there's the advanced capabilities of agentic frameworks that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Well, and it's difficult to imagine a more exciting area than the subsurface, where you have massive amounts of data, simulations that are underway that are constrained by compute power. So combining that with AI, it's really exciting to see this kind of shifting into the subsurface domain. Yeah. So I'm impressed. So we've heard from Abdullah about some great examples. We're going into the subsurface. John, so it sounds like the energy sector is well on its way. But when you look across it, is that the case?
So we've, as you would imagine, part of the role that I have in leading energy for Accenture globally around the world is I get to talk to a lot of our clients, but I also get to participate in a lot of work that we're doing in other industries. So we surveyed some 2,000 executives across 15 countries and 9 industries. And we came up with a number of archetypes, and one of those archetypes is the AI achiever. Right, the people who are really scaling AI for value. And of those 2,000 executives, 8%, right, would consider themselves, we would consider, right, they would probably consider themselves probably better, but we would consider them, right, to be AI achievers.
Was Kuwait included in the survey?
I'm sure they were. So we have, while we are making progress, I think we have a long way to go. And this really is, and as I talk to CEOs and other executives around the world, they don't want to repeat, right, let's call it the digital phenomenon, right, of MVP after MVP, point of, POV after POV. They really want to be able to deploy this, right, to really transform their business. And I think that's the opportunity that's in front of us. I still think there's a long way to go. We were having a great conversation before we came on stage, and we'll talk about some of these areas. I was asking both Abdullah and Hussein, what about capital projects? Right? All you need to do is be here at CERAWeek for a couple of days and look at the bow wave of capital projects that are coming our way, both to meet the energy transition, but also to build out the LNG infrastructure, the gas infrastructure that the world is going to need to fuel, right, the AI revolution. And of course, we're going to need to get after the application of AI in cap projects, as well as in the upstream, in the downstream, etc. My personal view on all of this is the value is to be found in our operations, right? We don't have to worry too much, Judson, honestly, about, the corporate office, right? The advancements. Actually, a lot of our partners will bring that to us, right? We need to be investing in our core operations to make the difference. We'll come back and talk about partnerships and the ecosystem a little bit later on, I think.
Okay, yeah. So 8%. So okay, but I'm a little bit sobered up now. Okay, but maybe stay with you, John, and maybe tap into your wisdom a little bit. So when you look at those 8% or companies that are well on their way, how are they characterized? What are they doing right? What are the factors that they're getting right?
Yeah. So we have 8 factors, right, that we consider, right, for the group of people that are in the achievers. Now, I'm not going to go through 8. We don't have the time to do that. But I just pick on a couple of things that I think, these people are getting right. And the first, of course, is redesigning work with an AI mindset. So this is not about, if you like, automating the work as it's done today, right, but actually reimagining how work will be done in the future. Right. Already, Hussein's mentioned agentic architectures. That's the next wave of where AI is going. So it won't be, right, that the human will be doing the work and passing to another human. It will be an agent who's doing the work to pass to another agent, right? And therefore, it will be the work will be actually done in a very different way. Doesn't matter whether it's in the subsurface, doesn't matter whether it's in the capital projects, but that's really where this is all going, and I think that's the opportunity that's in front of us. So the achievers, right, are really reimagining, right, how work will be done in the future. To be able to do that, another element of the 8 factors that we see the achievers, really getting after is the upskilling in the workforce, right? And here, I think, to be able to work in a different way, you can't be ignorant, right, of AI, you can't be ignorant of agentic architectures. You need to be able to work, right, in this new environment, whether you're in the development of the AI solution or whether you are using it in anger, right, to drive productivity, improvement, or otherwise, in your business. And then, of course, the other factor, which is actually not very much about AI per se, but is the change management that will need to come with that, because that's the big barrier to really seeing and scaling to value. It's the ability for your workforce to change. So they need to have the right skills, right? But they also need to be able to, work with these AI solutions, right, et cetera. And if you meet lots of resistance in the organization, it's a big barrier, right, to getting to that value.
So I notice a lot of the conversation is orienting, it's a highly technical topic, but a lot of it's orienting towards the organization, which I think it's probably the right way to go. But so now we've got some of these success factors. Abdullah, when you were speaking, you mentioned the strategy that you had laid out kind of initially and kind of where that fits into KPC's broader strategy, and you mentioned some successes. So is this a straight line process? You've got, you kind of got your marching orders and just kind of execute that, or is it a little bit dirtier than that?
No, it's not. So the progression of AI to be adopted within KPC and its subsidiary, it was more of an iterative nature, dynamic, and gets messy sometimes. Initially, AI started to be a tool to try to solve one specific problem, like improving a business process. And with the advancement of technology, we were able to include a bigger scope to see more of integrated problem solving, which really forced more initiative, more efficiencies to be achieved. And this had actually led to a shift in focus from a single discrete solution to more of an integrated approach. Then that integrated approach became like a holistic solution where you can deploy it in a different angle. So this is where AI came in place to integrate multiple business processes or departments sometimes to deliver that enhancement and optimization of production. What we've done to take this into a practice, the newly established Equidif Integrated Well Delivery. Equidif is the digital feed platform, KOC, again, the domestic upstream company in Kuwait has, was well established with the database classifications, structured databases. And again, the drilling team were actually looking for how can they push a little bit more in the optimization and efficiency, especially when you interact with different departments. This is including supply chain and logistics in between. Huge databases, big databases, that's what they call it in KOC, along with artificial intelligence model, accessing 14 different business intelligences. This approach actually streamlines all these efforts into a way to deliver, to actually identify the potential bottlenecks and provide optimization scenarios. Which really a great achievement out of this, an example of it, was the ability to increase production. This is through accelerating more than 50,000 barrels of production per day by utilizing the integrated well delivery.
It's the theme around kind of partnership. I think what you're talking about, but the one, or maybe more so around do you start from a discrete technology and kind of discrete solution and kind of build that up, or do you start from something very large? We hear a lot about managing the grid. That soon we're going to be managing the grid completely with a data-driven approach through AI. It's a great thought. I mean, I think we all aspire to that. But I guess the question is going to be, is that kind of building up to that? But you also mentioned internally as well, kind of working with different groups and kind of integrating across. And when we think about partnerships, sometimes we think about external entities, third-party entities, but I think it's just as well to be kind of thinking about internal partnerships internally as well, which can sometimes be a barrier.
Very true. Just to comment on this, because it includes different stakeholders within the organization. So for AI to be able to include different business processes or departments, it actually led to demolishing and breaking down these silos. Which really, in a way, led to a cross-functional collaboration culture being built as I don't want to call it side effect, but it's just a quick win that you start seeing, everybody start believing in the value that is coming out of this as a solution, where instead of waiting for days or hours sometimes just to get some approval done, it's right on the fly as it goes throughout the process.
So Hussein, what are some of the best examples you've seen where you can actually bridge some of these gaps, and whether you're bridging the gaps internally or whether you're bridging the gaps to third parties as well?
True. At the beginning, at the beginning we just started actually to, technology providers to be part of this. And once we got them on board, we're starting to get everybody to the list. But there's a bigger gap, and we'll talk about it later on, but I'll just pass that.
Yeah, so just to feed off of that, where I've seen success happen really, really phenomenally is when the internal collaboration between the IT and the technology function and the business functions is aligned on a particular business goal or KPI, right? So I'll start with the internal. Some of the work that we've done in AWS and in my previous life was really to build the foundational elements needed to not only experiment, but also deploy and manage and keep an evergreen process for these models and those AI-based applications so that you can scale them and deploy them at scale, right? It's great that you have an experiment, but it's going to live in that very small group unless you have the platform, the services, and the upskilling and the training so that everybody knows the tools that are available for them and the systems that are available for them so that they can take that from an experiment to a production application that could then benefit the company as a whole, whether it's in production or subsurface or trading or midstream, et cetera. That's the internal kind of alignment. And to be completely honest with you, sometimes we joke about it internally. Sometimes we have to connect the dots within our customer because they come to us or we go, or our teams go to them separately in silos. And sometimes somebody has to go and look at the bigger picture and say, okay, we need to connect these groups together because somebody in drilling is trying to build this phenomenal model or this AI application, but they have no idea about the platform that allows them, whether it's SageMaker or anything else that the company is using, that allows them to host that model, support it securely, right? Because you don't want just chaos. And then it helps drive a more enterprise approach to deploying and scaling AI systems. That's on the internal side. There's also the external partnerships where the operator or the company, the customer, doesn't have to do everything themselves. There is no need to do that. There's a need for R&D, there's a need for innovation, creation of new IP, but a lot of times, and I think John can attest to that, a lot of that innovation is happening in the ecosystem and the partners. And the way operators have leveraged this very, very successfully And an example I've done with Chevron, an example I'm doing today with Shell, is bringing in the technology providers and the hyperscalers that know very well infrastructure and AI services and the capabilities and the tool sets needed for that operator to use. The ISVs or the solution providers, like the Halliburtons of the world, the Schlumbergers of the world, and others, and maybe sometimes startups, right? That require a lot of support and funding and credits and all of that because they can't afford it. And then the operator subject matter expertise, and that trifecta has been amazing. One new, actually, extension to that is now, especially in the subsurface space, is right now we're pulling in infrastructure partners like NVIDIA, right? Especially in the generative AI space, right? So they're now becoming part of the conversation with the operators because they have SDKs and they have software layer that knows very well their own infrastructure, that you can pull them into the conversation and solve it. So this AI complexity in implementation is requiring unprecedented type of partnerships in the industry that I've never seen before, back when I was back at Chevron, before joining Microsoft. And it's also creating a new ecosystem of collaboration, even amongst other operators. You know, I've had the privilege to facilitate a conversation between E&I and other operators on something we're doing around a data platform, right? That type of collaboration, maybe it happened in the peripherals between operators. Now it's becoming more and more prevalent in technology. And I think the glue that puts, that brings it all together to make it successful is the global SIs that, like Accenture and others, that can manage the behavioral change management, manage the discipline needed to scale it, and be part of that that partnership.
Yeah. Well said.
John, any thoughts on how?
Well, I think I couldn't agree more with both of my fellow panelists. You know, I look at this in sort of three dimensions of the ecosystem. First of all, I don't think this is simply about going out and building a new ecosystem, but rather understanding the development pathways of the ecosystem you have. Right, so you can already hear in some of the remarks that Hussein's making, right, that AWS is building AI, right, very much into their next generation. SAP is doing the same. If you've been here, I think it was actually in this room on Monday, right, the CEO of SLB and the head of technology for BP were the panelists at that particular point, right? SLB, right, is investing tremendously in AI, as is Baker Hughes, as is Halliburton. So the first place I would start is to leverage the ecosystem partners you have today and understand what they're doing to, build AI into their solutions, etc. Second, I guess we talked a little bit about, right, bringing in new partners into that, maybe some of the startups, right, the NVIDIAs of the world, etc., who are probably new players on the pitch. And then actually we were talking about upskilling before we came on stage, and one of the things Abdullah and I were agreeing is that as you think about upskilling, right, it's the partnerships with research organizations, with academic organizations that you may not have felt was necessary in the past but will be necessary in the future. And it's this unique combination, right, of the ecosystem that I think will actually help us, scale for value. And I think you were just wanting to speak up on the sort of the university and that collaboration.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. Where's the innovation coming from? We can talk about partnerships, but where do you see the innovation coming from in this space? Maybe Abdullah.
Just before we get to this one, it is identified one of the challenges to actually have the upskilling of the workforce. And this is to try to link our SMEs to the technology applications, which works sometimes, but a lot of the time it's difficult to achieve. And this is a lot of programs in place to actually start to adapt this data scientist to be able to bridge that gap between the technology application and the SME requirement. On the innovation side...
Have you seen, because you've been doing digital for a long time, have you seen that effort in any previous period?
No, not really. And I think it's one of these new developed job opportunities that was not traditionally available in the industry.
Okay.
And the innovation part?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm curious. we talk about partnerships, and a lot of this is around deployment partnerships, kind of operating partnerships. But you did, John. You brought up some of the university, kind of like working with universities, startups. Hussein, you mentioned startups. Where are the innovations coming from that we need in this space?
Go ahead, John.
No, so actually, let me just, rather than give you...
There is a lot done within KPC for an operating companies. It's still in the early stages. It's more of a actually reactive mode, trying to address existing challenges. And I think once that is over, then will be the proactive approach, looking for pushing these for even higher achievements. So it's through collaborations with the research institutes. It's definitely capital investment in your strategic partners of these technology providers. And last, I think, yes, lots of programs with the academia has to be in place.
Okay.
If I can touch on that, I think it depends. And it depends on the maturity of the operator, depends on the use case that's being looked at, right? And so I remember one of the first 15 years ago, one of the first predictive maintenance artificial lift optimization model that I deployed in Chevron was from a collaboration with the university in California. And our biggest task then was, well, it works in this particular field, but it's horrible on the other fields, at a much bigger basin standpoint. So we worked back and forth, and a lot of research going there. Today, the innovation, as John said, comes from the large ISVs, right? Which primarily driving, especially in oil and gas, they are very ISV-driven organizations, right? You have very pioneering, old, have been there for a long time and embedded within the workflows that their end users are. So a lot of the innovation is happening there. A lot of that innovation requires technology and infrastructure and platform innovation coming from the hyperscalers like AWS, and the services that were not possible to do on premise, and the scale and the infrastructure is now available for them to do so, right? But there's also innovation coming from the startups or some of the niche companies that are not startups anymore, but more kind of mature companies like Blueware, for example, on the seismic interpretation side, right? We've worked with them with many of their operators that are using them, and we've seen some phenomenal results on seismic interpretation workflows simply by using scale and infrastructure that did not necessarily exist on premise that could exist in the cloud. So it really depends. The innovation comes from within the operators themselves. A lot of them have R&D. There's a lot of new imaging, especially in seismic imaging algorithms that are coming in collaboration with academia or even government entities, that our job as hyperscalers is to enable the deployment and the scale of using that. And so one of the things that I've led in the last year and a half is there was always a burden to move very large scale, complicated, high-performance computing workloads from oil and gas companies to the cloud. It was just simply too complicated, too large, too monolithic to do. So what we've done is we came up with a completely new, innovative way of leveraging cloud-native services to move from a monolithic application. So again, reimagining how you would do work completely from scratch, and said, okay, can we decouple all of the tasks necessary in an HPC workload and run it as an event-based approach? And now we have implementations almost at every operator, simply because it gives you, now you have the availability of services you didn't necessarily even know existed or could think about on premise. And that type of innovation, you need the partnership with the operators, and in this particular case with HPC, it was Oxy, Shell, and then some of our partner ecosystem like S-Cube, SizeWave, Cymax, Shearwater, TGS, and many others, right? So that innovation, again, comes from this collaboration of a complete idea that was a whiteboard session that we started.
I don't know how many of the CEO presentations you had an opportunity to listen to over the last 3 days, but I listened to a few, and I think just about everyone said that they were going to be the AI company and that they were going to be the digital company, the leading in the world. So, I mean, I guess the question, partnerships, we're hearing a lot about partnerships, a lot around co-innovation. What's the competitive differentiator? How are companies either differentiating themselves? What's the IP that they're protecting to be able to do that? Or is this all, out there?
I spoke too much.
To me? Yes.
We're going off script now.
That's okay. So one of the things we haven't talked about, right, which may not be by definition competitive advantage, but is data, right? Because you can build all the models you want to build, right? But models learn, right, based on the data you have. And I think for our industry, right, there is some of that data that probably is proprietary, right, but a lot of that data, right, that isn't. And I had the privilege. I don't know whether anybody from the Aramco team is in the audience today, but I was over in the Aramco house yesterday when they launched a partnership with SPE, Society of Petroleum Engineers, right, and I2KT, right, where they have built an energy large language model, right, using the 75 years of history of the SPE. That is an opportunity for us as an industry, right, to benefit from something that would have been very hard to get after. So it's something there where Aramco provided the money, SPE provided the data, and I2KT built the model.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that's not getting to your answer, Justin, of competitive advantage, but it is really getting to the heart of how some of these partnerships come to life for the benefit of the industry. Yeah. Now, when you get to the heart of exploration, right? The heart of being the best in seismic, that I think, right, is where competitive advantage lives. And if you can master that, right, then I think that gives you, right, a step up on a lot of other people. But I'm not from the industry, so I probably should let Abdullah, see whether he agrees with me, or not.
Totally, I agree with what John highlighted. The drive of, again, if you want to say competitive edge on this, at KPC portfolio, you would say a lot of these technology providers come by and try to understand what the challenges that KOC or KMPC, be the downstream companies, are facing. However, few great solutions were actually deployed, and then it's one of the issues actually. For technology to work, for a solution to be deployed, it has to really still make the commercial sense, right? So we're not able to develop a metric that really measures what's the return on investment on AI yet. It's in the making. We see the value, we see the enhancement, we see the improvement, but it's still a short time. Having a longer period, I think this is the evolvement and the development of the technology is fast, and I think if we adapt to this change quicker, we will be in a better position to make these decisions.
Yeah. One thing I definitely want to follow up on as well is on the foundational pieces. I talked about them earlier, right? And data is one key pillar of that. The data foundation needed for those very specific domain-specific applications and data types and data sets. But I do want to remind everyone that a lot of the new approaches to this large language models and generative AI capabilities is questioning some of that. And I'll give you an example. Right? Everybody's used ChatGPT, Claude, etc. Right? Those models are trained on millions and millions of internet data. Now, I don't know about you, but the last time I looked at internet data, there's a lot of contradiction, there's a lot of garbage, and there's a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to train things or use. However, it's been extremely important for those generalized use cases. Because if it wasn't for the training on that semi-garbage data, right, the models would not have picked up the ability to communicate like a human being by reading all of this corpus of data. Now, when you apply that to domain specific, then it becomes problematic, right? One of the experiments we've done with a partner was we said, okay, let's do this for seismic. And we did a significant training task on signal data, on some seismic data. And the model came back with some interesting results, but it completely lost the ability to talk to us. So you would ask a question, it would come back with gibberish. Like it lost the generalized aspect of language and communication, right? So we're like, okay, this is weird. So we kept the model, and what we did is we started doing a fine tuning. So the generative AI capabilities allows you like to do context-based approach. So you don't have to start from scratch. DeepSeek pioneered that, by the way, right? Because they've used the knowledge of OpenAI and improved their own models. So companies are starting to think about that. How do you take the generalist approach and the benefits that came from that and actually apply them to a very specific domain, data set, or use case? And we're seeing some very, very good results in that. I just wanted to remind them, because we're used to the data marts and the data warehouses, and then the data lakes kind of opened up a little bit, the unstructured architecture, and they just throw everything there, and then became sinks and all kinds of stuff, right? And now the large language approach is really questioning that data architecture foundation a little bit. But the results of combining both worlds, or something new that we don't even know yet, is showing some potential. Back to you, Judd.
So we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes, but I hear a lot about the data, and so if you're a large company, KPC, but if you're a smaller company, are you at a competitive disadvantage? How do you see partnerships around that kind of data sharing? Anything interesting in how smaller companies can build themselves up to have the same resources as a larger one?
I'll finish.
Yeah. I mean, S&P Global, one of the biggest data providers in the world. We work with you all, and we work with others. And what I want everyone to know is that the technology is there. We have something in AWS called clean rooms or data share or whatever it is, but the technology is there to allow you to share data securely. The operators in the industry has been doing this for a long time with joint ventures, et cetera. Maybe not great, maybe not optimized, not perfect, but I think the technology is here to facilitate that data movement without necessarily even sharing the raw data itself, right? And then, the partnerships with the ISVs who have the data, help them build the capabilities to drive data as a service is also important, because it allows them to reach a broader audience. It makes the receiving end of that data easily. It's just moving stuff from one S3 bucket to another in a different account, right? And so, leverage those technology partnerships to do that. And we're doing it with the operators, the partners, et cetera. John, I wonder what you want to do, add on that.
No. So I think, we live in an industry,
Yeah.
right, that has small players, medium players, and big players, right? Some of the, most innovative things that are going on, right, happen, right, in the Permian, right? I just had the privilege and pleasure to see Dan interview Harold Harm, who is obviously one of the pioneers at Continental, right, in, the unconventional resources. It wasn't the big guys who invented that. It was the small guys, the wildcatters who did that. And so I think we've got a proven track record where size does not put you at a disadvantage. It's how you use, right, and he was very eloquent today in speaking with Dan about how did he use, right, the SLBs of the world, the Halliburtons of the world. He said he was self-taught. And what he did was ask them questions, and they were very generous in giving him answers. Well, imagine that's now AI-powered. So actually, I don't think you're disadvantaged to size. Now, in what I would call the real R&D end of things, it's helpful to be a KPC, to be an Aramco, to be an Exxon, to be a Chevron, right? But that does not mean that the others in the industry are going to get left behind. Not from my lived experience in the industry, and I don't think AI will be any different.
It's a good note to leave it on. I mean, just to summarize things a little bit. So it's pretty exciting. And so, John, you let us off and you let us know that we're still early days, that we still have a long way to go, but it's an exciting. But I think what really impressed me is that the amount of R&D that's going into this and the amount of activity, it's almost like oil and gas is back. We're investing in this. I know, Hussein, you shared with me earlier that the level of investments in RFPs that you're seeing over massive 5 to 10 year timescales. So we're really beginning to see this investment back into the area, into some core industry areas. So, I think we have great reason for optimism, and we have great reason. I think the organizational aspects really came up, and that's going to be the key to kind of scale it up. But thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your perspectives, and then thank you for joining us today for the plenary.
Thank you for having us.
May we have